Hello everybody and welcome to another Oscar prediction video where today I will be taking a look at the category of Best Sound. And that is a category, singular, because sound is now one category where it used to be two for sound editing and sound mixing. And I have kind of mixed feelings on it. On the one hand, I liked when it was 24 categories. 24 is a nice, even number, and 23 feels a little bit weird to me, but I I do understand that the two categories are very, very related. Before it was sound editing, which is the creation of sound effects, and sound mixing, which is the blending of sound effects with music and dialogue so that everything can be heard nicely. It didn't seem that confusing to me, but apparently it was confusing for other people, and we saw very weird things like Bohemian Rhapsody winning sound editing. Um, Nowadays, it is weird because big technical movies that get on for both kind of feels like, oh, it's just another nomination to add to the tally. Um, so I get it, I get it. And it is curious. I feel like if you went back to a lot of older movies, certain years were like one movie, one editing, and a different movie, one mixing. Like, what would change? What would win both? In this particular year, I think there is an argument to be made that if editing and mixing were two different categories, then there might be a split, but maybe there wouldn't be. I think there is one pretty clear, solid frontrunner for Best Sound this year. But I think it's still definitely worth it to go through the nominees. But before we do, I just want to say it does bother me. This was the first year that the sound category had a short list, so there were 10 selected films, and of those 10, 5 were chosen. And to me, it feels like more and more more and more categories get short lists. Obviously, as the years go on, more and more categories are individually looked at by shortlist, and it bothers me because I like when there's a lot of films to choose from and you don't know what's going to happen and it feels like anything can happen. When there's a short list, you know pretty clearly, okay, it's not going to be too crazy. It's going to be one of these films that gets on. So, but I don't know, maybe that's just me, maybe that's just personal preference. I do think that we do see solid work across all of the movies that are nominated. It does continue to bug me that the animated films get the short end of the stick when it comes to these categories. I think making animated films, everything is created. Whereas with live action films, at least some things get recorded on set. But animated films, every sound has to be invented from scratch. And I think of all the animated films this year, The Mitchells versus the Machines is one that definitely should have contended for Best Sound. But that's just my personal preference. And yeah, let's get started by looking at this category. And I will be including clips from the movies in these videos, and hopefully it won't sound too loud. Hopefully we'll blend right in. This is testing my own sound abilities here. So let's get started with fifth most likely to win, Belfast.
That's not the statement we're trying to make. Billy, come on. Yell me, you're coming. Come on. Out. Come on, get out. Out. Come on. Time to get out of here. Don't try it. So you two are going to guarantee safe passage for me and my men. You try to run, I'll put a bullet in your son's head.
So this is an interesting nomination because with this movie, it's really only getting on because of certain select sequences in the film. A lot of the film is relatively subdued, relatively simple, not the sort of thing that would be nominated, but it does have these riot sequences, which there's one at the beginning and there's one fairly late in the film, and for most of the movie, it doesn't do anything particularly noteworthy with sound, but those sequences do stand out. And the fact that the movie is already a Best Picture contender means that people were listening in for those sequences specifically. And the way that they, when when they shortlist the sound, they're allowed to like choose a clip from the movie to show. And for Belfast, obviously they chose the riot sequences. So the nomination certainly makes sense, but I don't think it's going to win because I think when you look at the other nominees here, they have more consistent sound work throughout the film, and while the sound work in the riot sequences is certainly very well done, there's certainly a lot of people that are like, yeah, but the riot sequences are only a small percentage of the movie, and I don't really see it doing well outside of that. I don't have much else to say, to be perfectly honest with you. I think this I think this might be the most undeserved of the nominations, quite frankly, and not to give short stick to the riot sequences, but I think the work outside of the riot sequences is nothing really that noticeable, and again, they only take up a small fraction of this movie. So I get why it was nominated, but I don't see voters having any real incentive to vote for this, given some of the other nominees. Fourth most likely to win is The Power of the Dog. So, of the five nominees, The Power of the Dog is easily the most subtle work. At least Belfast has those riot sequences. Power of the Dog, there are certain select moments, like in the clip I showed, and the sound work is certainly very well done, but it's also very subtle. It doesn't call attention to itself in the way you might think when you hear that it's a Western. There's no gunfights or explosions or anything like that. It's a very subdued, quiet film, which makes its nomination in this category all the more surprising. A lot of people were not expecting it to get in, but Power of the Dog just swept nominations. It got in everywhere it could have except for costume design, and I think it is really telling just how loved the film is overall. The reason I have it ranked higher than Belfast is because some voters might just check off Power of the Dog in every category. And to be fair, it is very good work, it's just very subtle work. And it's definitely leaning much more on the mixing side of things than the editing. And I just find it really difficult to believe that this is going to win, given the movies that it's up against have much more showier sound work. But the fact that the movie is so beloved and that it's in the moment in the frontrunner position to win Best Picture, but it could definitely take a lot of other things too with it. I think the nomination is just a show of power, no pun intended, for this movie. And we saw the same thing when Birdman got the sound nominations or when Roma got the sound nominations, even though that didn't pan out for that film in the end. Um, it shows support for the overall film, but I don't know. I don't think this is going to win. I think they like to spread the wealth a little bit. Even if Power of the Dog ends up winning like 8 awards on the night, this is going to be one of the more difficult awards for it to win because it is easily the most subtle of the nominations, and they like to go for big, bombastic sound movies and not more subtle. And speaking of big, bombastic sound movies, number 3 most likely to win is No Time to Die.
James, listen to me. I'd rather die than you think I
So, No Time to Die might very well be the loudest of the nominees. It has that going for it. It is an action movie with these big gunfight scenes and explosions and all the stuff that you want, and the car engine stuff that you heard in that clip. And I think it would. In terms of pure quality, I get voting for it in this lineup. I think it's not just loud for the sake of being loud, as you sometimes see or hear in this category. It's all done with a purpose, and I think it works to help the overall film. I think this would, I think this is a very deserving nomination, and I could maybe argue for it being a deserving winner. The thing that holds me back is the fact that this is the only film in this category that is not also up for Best Picture. And this movie is certainly well liked. It's got 3 nominations, but the other films are all up for Best Picture. And I sort of feel like No Time to Die, if it's going to win anywhere, is going to win in song, but we'll get to that later. I would get voting for it, but I kind of feel like there's 2 big bombastic blockbuster movies in this category, and I feel like the other one is going to take all of the attention away from it. But certainly No Time to Die is very good work, and it's, again, very deserving nomination. But I can't help but feel like the fact that it's not a Best Picture nominee means that voters don't have as much incentive to vote for it, and some may not even have incentive to watch it, which is a shame because it's a great movie. But I think the sound work, while certainly very big and loud, and that usually does help in this category, I almost want to make it 2, but I'm gonna hold off on that. I don't think they're gonna give it to it, but I think it's definitely possible. Now, number 2 most likely to win is West Side Story.
Okay, Tony, that's enough. Tony, that's enough. Let go!
So this film benefits from being a musical, and in the sound categories, being a musical helps a lot. It's also a Best Picture nominee, as I mentioned before. It's a really well-liked movie, and it's not just music for music's sake, as you heard in the clip. They actually combine music with other sounds. There's actual action, there's actual violence in this. There's like running around and like chain link fences and like big sounds on top of the musical numbers and the sound mixing in them. So it's certainly very good work, and I get why it's here. And the fact that it's a musical really could help it in this category, has been known to help. I believe the original West Side Story also won sound, although to be fair, it won a lot of awards, and this movie I think is not going to win as many. With that being said, if this category was split into 2, Best Sound Editing and Best Sound Mixing, I could see a split happen. I could see this movie winning sound mixing, because musicals have a better shot in the mixing category. That's not always the case. La La Land didn't win, but I think Les Mis won and Chicago won, and this feels like in that same vein. Now, if the split sound category is more like mixing than editing, then I could see enough voters flocking to West Side Story to give that the win. And yet, I'm not predicting it to win because, in my mind, the film that is number 1 most likely to win is Dune.
Bless the Maker and his water. Bless the coming and going of him. May his passage cleanse the world. and keep the world for his people.
So Dune is, I think we see this almost every year, the big bombastic blockbuster that is also up for Best Picture. And when you're a blockbuster that's up for Best Picture, it's kind of hard to lose this category. This is the Avatar. This is the Gravity. This is the Mad Max Fury Road. This is the movie that has all the text that all the eyes are on. Nominated for every possible below the line, and yet not nominated for director. I will never get over that. But it really is such a spectacle to the eyes and to the ears. And I will admit, I am surprised that it's not quite as loud as No Time to Die was, but I think this film is a little bit more focused on the mixing, not just on having great editing for the machinery and for the sandworms and everything like that, but the film does make sure to have like really atmospheric sound design so that you feel like you're there and you really feel the size and scope of everything. So a lot of hard work went into creating the sound of this film, and it really shows. And it just feels like your winner to me. Now, with that said, I think it's possible that West Side Story upsets because it's musical, and it's possible that No Time to Die upsets because it's the loudest film in the category. I don't think Power of the Dog or Belfast have any real chance unless Power of the Dog just wins everything. But Dune is the film that makes the most sense to me, and it makes the most sense to a lot of people. A lot of people are saying that this is one of the easier calls of the night. It's just very big, very bombastic. This is the movie that just all of your attention is grasped by it. And I think it's going to be hard to deny. Now, I am trying to figure out how many awards it's going to win on the night because it's got so many tech nominations. And I think in a lot of the visual categories, there's other films that could take it from it. In cinematography, it could be Dune, or it could be Tragedy of Macbeth, or it could be Power of the Dog. In production design, it could be Dune, or it could be Nightmare Alley or West Side Story. In editing, it could be Dune, or it could be King Richard or Tick Tick Boom. Like, there's a lot of ifs, ands, maybes for a lot of the visual categories. However, and we'll certainly get to those, but I think Dune is certain to win two, visual effects and sound. I would be very surprised if it lost either of those. Maybe those are the only two it wins. That would be kind of weird. But I think if nothing else, it's guaranteed those two. Some would say it's guaranteed score as well, but I would argue it's not, and we'll get to that category soon enough. It is interesting. As I'm going through these Oscar prediction videos, I know that this Sunday is Critics' Choice and BAFTA, and I'm saving a lot of stuff for after those. There's a lot of categories where I need to see what Critics' Choice and BAFTA do before I make a final decision. And for right now, I'm trying to get through any and all categories that I can before I get there. And Dune is one of the few that I feel pretty confident in predicting. A lot of the categories this year seem more up in the air. Even the ones that have supposed frontrunners, I can see room for an upset. But Dune, I'm pretty confident, is winning Best Sound. Okay, so that took longer than I thought it would. Thank you guys for watching, and join me tomorrow where I will be taking a look at the category of Best Director. See you then.